Hey, Pastor Josh here. We're reading Genesis chapter 13, verses 5 through 9 today. By way of review, remember God has called Abraham to the promised land, to the land of Canaan. Abraham got there. He was not finding a place to really stay. Even the place that he did find between Ethel and Ai was just kind of a hilly, not a place that he really could find that he could sustain there. And so he left there, went down, and then the famine came into the land, and then he went down into Egypt, which is definitely not the promised land. There, Abraham sinned by lying to Pharaoh, and then Abraham has now come back to the promised land. He's went back to this place between Bethel and Ai, and there he called upon the name of the Lord. So now Abraham is back in the promised land. Remember, this is really important for us to keep in mind. Who are the original first readers of the book of Exodus? And that is the complete people of Israel that have come out of Egypt. They've come out of slaves. They've went through the Red Sea. They've come to Mount Sinai, and they have, within this time frame, at some point, have then received Genesis in its form, in its completed form, and so they would be the initial first readers of this, and so they're going to be intensely interested in what is Abraham doing in the promised land, and how is his interaction with the promised land. So we now get into our reading. Abraham is finding a hard time settling down. So verse 5, and Lot, remember that is that's Abram's nephew, Lot, who went with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents. And that's something that the text has pointed out many times, is that Abraham had a lot of stuff. He was wealthy. That was probably because he was successful at what he did. We even saw in his encounter with Pharaoh that Pharaoh ended up giving him gold and riches and even livestock because he took Sarah, his wife, because Abraham said, "Oh, Sarah's my sister," and Pharaoh then took her, and then plagues came on Egypt, and then so Abraham got wealthy as a result of that. But it's not just Abram, it's also Lot, who has been with Abraham this whole time. He has amassed a lot of flocks, herds, and tents. And then we go to verse 6, a very important verse, so that the land could not support both of them dwelling together. Now, we're talking about the promised land, the promised land, that land to the Israelites coming out of Egypt. This land that's called the land flowing with milk and honey, this land that is able to sustain them, their promised land, their homeland. Wait a second. This land that's supposed to be able to support us when we get there. This land could not support Abraham and Lot. They couldn't support this small group of people compared to us. So if the land could not support them, how's it going to support us? So here you see that the land, there's a little bit of question mark. Is this land truly able to sustain us? Is this land truly able to sustain Abraham? Is this place really Abraham's final home? So the attitude we need to change here is that we need to realize that God gives us transient, temporal blessings, gifts even now, but they do not last forever, and they are not meant to be our permanent final home. Remember, our permanent final home is heaven. Ultimately, that heavenly city that's going to come down. Heaven is going to come down to earth after the resurrection, after Jesus dies, or after Jesus returns again, after Satan is finally defeated. When all of that is said and done, the millennial kingdom is finished. All of that has all happened at the very, 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 very end. Our eternal home home is not in any sort of blessings that we receive here. It's something future that we get to look forward to. So it's good, but the things that we have now will never be able to totally support us and take care of us. And so here, the primacy, the supremacy of the land, there's a question mark about that implanted in the minds of the Israelites and even us as a reader. Okay, is Abraham going to be able to hang out in the land, and is the Israelites going to be able to hang in the land? That's going to be a long-term story that we'll keep returning to, the relationship between God's people and their land, the place that God has given them. So Lot and Abraham, they can't dwell together, for their possessions were so great that they could not dwell together. Well, that seems to be the blessing actually, in a sense, has become a curse. The blessing has created problems. They have a lot of things, and now there is actually strife. Verse 7, and there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. And, of course, that would be a sin to confess. Any type of anger and strife and fighting that perhaps is happening between you and a coworker, between you and a family member, that doesn't need to be happening, especially if it's happening because of blessing, because you have a lot of stuff and you're beginning to crowd each other out. The blessing of being in the land is actually, and then the blessing of all these possessions actually has caused strife. They've actually grown too big for their britches. They're bigger than what the land can actually support. So then there was actually strife that's happening. And then here's this little note. At that time, the Canaanites and the Perizzites were dwelling in the land. Well, here's part of the issue why the land could not support them, is because they already have inhabitants. The Canaanites, the Perizzites, of course, on them would be the curses of Ham, the curses of Canaan, because of what happened with Noah and his sons. So go back and read that if you've not. So they were being crowded out because of this enemy, and the Israelites will actually come in, and these folks will actually be the Israelite enemies about 400 or so years later. Then Abram said to Lot, I'll be doing that a lot, calling Abraham or Abraham before his name is actually changed to it. It's an example to follow, because Abram takes the mature route, and he's the one that says, we don't need to be fighting. This is an issue. And he then, in a heart of faith, because remember, he just called upon the name of the Lord in the first part of chapter 13. He takes the lead and says, we don't need to be fighting. We need to separate. What an example for us to follow. We who are spiritual, and Stephanie knows I'm not spiritual many times, but when we are in our best state, when we are walking with the Lord, if we're going to be the mature ones, oftentimes we have to be the ones to say the hard things, to be the ones to lead out and say, we've got to solve this problem. In fact, I'm going to give you the better part so that there won't be strife and issues between us. So Abram said to Lot, let there be no strife between you and me, and between your herdsmen and my herdsmen, for we are kinsmen. An attitude to remember that probably the majority of people that you have a beef with, the majority of people that you have a conflict with, are probably rather close to you. Many of them are probably your own family members. And if they're not your family members, they're so close to you and so ingrained into your life, whether that's because of business and work or where you live at, they're so ingrained into your life, you might as well call them your kinsmen, like they're close to you. And that's an attitude you need to change in your mind and your heart. Realize that, okay, these people I'm fighting with, they're really my brothers and sisters, and we really need to find a way for us to live together in peace. And if we can't exactly live together, maybe we can create some sort of boundaries in place where we can still be unified and be friendly toward one another instead of all this strife and fighting happening. So he says, hey, we're kinsmen, so there needs to be no strife between us. And then he says, is not the whole land before you? There's a lot of stuff out there where we're kind of staying here where some of the cities are. So separate yourself from me. If you take the left hand, then I will go to the right. Or if you take the right hand, then I will go to the left. Lot, you pick which place you want to go. You go there, and I'll go the other direction. We need to divide. We don't need this strife happening anymore. And here you see that the boundaries will actually create peace between the two places, the two people. And so sometimes you have to even wonder the problems, the strife, that sometimes may be happening in your life, is that possibly a sign that there needs to be some sort of boundary erected, some sort of boundaries put in place, even some sort of separation, a good separation where there's still love and concern toward one another, but that we need to go in different directions. So pray that has been a blessing to you. I think it went a little longer this time, and I will see you all in the next video.